when I joined this call, for me it was outcome. Every call I joined, what's the outcome? What's expected of me? And I'll use the dojo again. When I'm in the dojo, there's only one outcome I'm thinking about. Do I get to kick somebody in the head today? Because that's the goal that will relieve the stress for me.
It feels good, right? Yo, I'm in the light at the end of the tunnel. Paper stacks, yeah, I got them in the bundles. Harry Potter breaking bread with the muggles. They said I wouldn't make it, now they looking puzzled. They said I wouldn't take it, I done go on hustle. Get the bag, it ain't never.
All right, Ty, you ready?
I'm ready, Kev.
All right, Amir, you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. Let's hear that whistle, Ty. Timeout. Tyler, who are we taking a timeout with today?
Well, Kev, good to see you, man. Hope you're not hitting the winter up there too much yet. I know October to November, you get that gut feeling up in Rochester. But ladies and gentlemen, children of America and beyond, we have Amir Khawaja. He is the podcast host and co-founder of Black Belts and Boardrooms, a couple of dudes you don't want to get in a brawl with in an alley there, guys. And we have him at Senior Director of Payments, Site Reliability, Engineering, and Technology at Discover Financial Services. Amir, I've known you for a while. Thanks for finally hopping on with us. The timing aligned. My ultimate question for you to start this up is, what strip is better in your mind? Say you're 24 years old. Are you taking 6th Street or are you taking the strip in Vegas?
Oh, wow. Okay, so strip is less dangerous, I think. So 6th Street, I do not trust those drunks.
So we're going to the strip with money, of course, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen the strip, it's a big street, like it's Las Vegas Boulevard. But if you go to 6th Street, it's a little tight. You know, there's a lot of construction going on, and you've got a lot of people feeling really happy after a few drinks. So I don't know. I'll take the wider street over the narrow ones on that example. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. My wife has got me going to Starbucks on the weekends. She's all about the pumpkin right now. To Tyler's point, we're full-fledged into fall mode, springing into winter here. But Amir, what's your coffee order?
Oh man, 2 shots of espresso and 6 ounces of water, straight up black. Yep.
Nice. All right.
Dude,
I like that.
Same, Amir. I always get thrown off like once a year. I'll order like the pumpkin or some like pecan or pistachio in the cold foam, and it's only good for like 2 sips. Have you ever had that experience? Like the first sip is amazing, second sip is okay, but then it gets a little watery. Then I just want my black coffee. So you're just a horsepower kind of guy, Amir. So you said how many shots? 2 or 3?
Okay, so I get very particular about things. So I'm one of those people, you give me a topic. If I really like it, I want to go deep into it. I want to know as much as I can. Coffee just happens to be one of those things. So not to sound too nerdy, Tyler, but I will tell you, 2 ounces, 2 shots of espresso. That's 4, 6 ounces of water. That's my go-to 10 ounces of coffee in the morning. And the only reason I drink black, I don't need the extra calories if I don't need it. And black coffee at that level, it's got no bitter. It's just right. And I can tolerate it. If you tell me go to Starbucks and get a black coffee from the drip, oof. Yeah, that's a lot of bitter. I'll still chug it down, but not in the happiest of ways.
Dude, I could just see him in his basement just looking for the pure mix of ounces and where it loses its bitterness. But I'm an espresso guy myself. It's real quick. Give me that quick punch. Amir, we're driving next to you. We're headed to maybe a Las Vegas Raiders game together, and you happen to turn on one of your favorite tunes of all time. What are you turning on to max volume for Tyler and I?
Ooh. All right. So you caught me a little off guard there because I'm not as musical as Renard, my co-host on Black Belts and Boardrooms. But I'll go with Legend.
Okay.
What is that? Who's the band? I'm forgetting the name of the band now. It's Legends. Why am I drawing a blank? You know the name?
I'm looking for
We're looking it up. Google's a hell of a thing. The Score?
The Score. Yes,
All
that's
right.
the one. Okay.
All right.
So
I'm
the
adding
reason why I
that to
say
the
Legend
playlist right
is-
after this.
Yeah. So there's one lyric in that song where it says, we're not stopping till we're legend. And that's kind of my drive every day. Like when I'm committed to something, I'm committed to it. So not that I'm looking for legendary status, but that's the one line from that song that always hooks me in.
Dude, and outside of work, I mean, or your career, what types of activities or hobbies are you looking to be a legend in? Have you come across lately?
So, okay, so legend to me is just an aspiration, but I don't care to be legend. Like if I never become a legend, that's not going to hurt my feelings one way or the other. But what I do really care about is being the best in everything I do. Because to me, ultimately, if I'm going to put time and energy in anything, I don't want to waste my time and do a half job on the thing, because at the end of the day, whether I do a half job or 100%, the job is the job. But I want to give it 100% because at the end of the day, I don't want to come back and do it twice. I don't want somebody telling me, "Hey, you didn't give your best effort," because to me that just goes back to my personal character. And it's the same message I tell my kids. It's like you're going to, whether it's cleaning the bathrooms, writing code, leading a team, anything you do, if you have that job, you have that responsibility, go in with 100% attitude, nothing less, because that is how everybody's going to see you.
And do you feel like you sleep better that way, Amir? Like, have you ever like half something before in your life and tried to sleep?
Oh, no, I don't sleep if I do. If I know I'm doing something, poorly, I have a hard time. But yes, I do sleep really well when I know I'm doing the right thing, because ultimately it matters to me, that my work product, if it's out there in the world, if it's a conversation even, or if it's just something that you're going to use as a software, I want to make sure it's the best experience for me and my customers.
And how do you convey that message to the kids, like even your kids, Amir? Like I have a lot of conversations right now, and I
Mm,
grew up in a household of like a Texas high school football coach and Arkansas like high school football. Like it was like win by 60, or it wasn't that you're in trouble. It's just like that was normal, the mentality. But I can see a sway in the younger generations, I think.
mm.
I think you know what I'm talking about. Um, I guess let's start with your family. How do you convey that message? Like not being like a drill sergeant by any means, but just the fact that quality work builds trust with others, I think. And we
Mhm.
need that in our careers or in just friendship. If you have a friendship, that's doing no one no good. And I'm feeling that a lot, I think, in the younger generation. So how does Amir, convey that message to the young ones or even your kids?
Yeah, so, very differently because my kids are now teenagers. I've got an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old. When they were younger, it looked different. Now that they're older and a little bit more independent, it looks different. When they were kids, I used to tell them that, whatever you do, give it your best shot because that is the only way you should be doing anything, right? And I would just kind of drill that over and over again. And I'm sure at some level my kids are like, "Oh my goodness, dad's doing this again. I really wanted to do this for a second," and when they hit the teenage years. But now that they're a little older, I tell them that, if you're not as hungry for success, whatever that looks like for you, as you are hungry about meeting your friends or showing up on some Instagram reel or whatever, then are you really serious about your passion, your career, whatever that work is? I have one who loves to be an artist and she's very good. My daughter is an excellent artist. Even at the age of 19, she's been, really showing some skill. And then my son wants to be a software engineer and he wants to pursue a PhD in computer science. So I'm telling them that, both of these are not easy journeys. Both of these are going to take you to entrepreneurship. But if you're not hungry for success. And I'm borrowing words from Eric Thomas, for example. If you're hungry for social media, then you're not hungry for success. But if you're really hungry for success, you're going to do exactly what needs to be done.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's awesome. I think that's a statement for all the youth is, but even adults. I mean, I still see adults, even their titles on LinkedIn make me laugh. It's like expert in, or world's best. It's like, oh my god. It's amazing, but sometimes people just want to skip all the hard work and just put on this false pretext as to who they are and what level that they are and as far as the skill goes. And I love what you said, Ty. Quality builds trust. It builds trust with your customers, obviously, but also internally when you're working on some of those projects and seeing it from start to finish. We talked a little bit about your black belt and that nobody really wants to break into your house anytime soon. So the next leadership lounge, obviously, nobody's going to be taking on your house, Amir, I don't think. But I got a question. The podcast itself is Black Belts and Boardrooms. What similarities have you noticed between the mat and that round or square table within the boardroom? What are some of the similarities that you see between the two different sports, let's call them?
Yeah, so, I don't know if you've ever tried to spar somebody. I'll start
No,
with
but
that premise
Tyler's
first.
trying to get me to. I haven't actually got there. Yeah. My
Yeah, so
4-year-old often, but I can still kick his ass, Amir. So
So I'll start with the sparring, to connect it to the boardroom. So when you're in there as a beginner, you're in a fight, let's say street fight. The adrenaline kicks in right away. Things become very narrow. You're looking at this other person, and that's it. You don't care what's going on around you. When you're in a controlled environment like a dojo and you're a color belt and you're going to fight somebody, and I know Tyler in jiu-jitsu knows this really well. It ain't fun being choked out, and especially if it's your first time. So in Taekwondo, you're punching and kicking, mostly kicking. That adrenaline still happens, especially if the other partner that you're sparring with is somebody more seasoned. Let's say another black belt, for example, right? That intimidation factor kicks in. If you're in the corporate environment, the same thing happens. You're walking into a room, you've got other senior leaders, they know their craft really well. How do you present yourself? So it's that confidence that comes with knowing that I am comfortable with who I am in martial arts that brings you, to the corporate landscape and say, okay, I know what I'm doing. These people know what they're doing. Let me see what needs to be done and let me focus on the task at hand. So it's not so much about you as an individual, but what skills are you bringing to the table? Because obviously you're invited, and obviously you have some value to add. You're not there for nothing, and it's knowing and having that confidence right out of the gate that I think is one of the lessons that I took away from martial arts, at least.
it's really cool. Yeah, and like you said, just a general respect for one another. Not really you can make all these assumptions based off the color of their belt, but you enter the mat with a lot of respect, but also having I guess that self-awareness and belief in yourself as well at the same time. And nothing better than to see it in a true fight or flight response, right? Where stress is extremely high and those emotions and hormones are taking over and almost subconsciously or consciously taking over some of the decisions that you're making in such a high stress environment. But I love what you said, like stick with your strengths, stick with what you know, and don't pretend that you know something that you don't. And it's a great reminder for the boardroom.
Oh, and Amir, isn't it the best? If you ever do it in the morning, like in jujitsu, I was doing like 6:30 classes, like passing out by getting choked, and then coming to like your day job, and like hearing someone complain about something was hilarious to me. Well, like I'm not talking bad about anybody, but like something go wrong, and like 3 hours ago, I was just like because when you first start, you like don't like to give up, right? Like you don't like to tap out, so you just like start to see like the lights go down. But it really taught me like the respect part, Amir, in just martial arts in general. And I'll give you one fun example. In Asheville, North Carolina, a couple weeks ago, a guy from Google reached out to me just randomly. And he was like, dude, a bunch of CISOs are in my hometown, man. He was like, you want to hit the mats? And we went to the mats, I don't know, like at 7 p.m. And everyone was so um, caught off guard. They were like, you're going to go fight somebody at 7 p.m. And this guy was a black belt too. But like, there's something to me that like, there's this new form of trust that I've found that the people that keep showing up in like a martial arts setting for years and years and years and years, I'll probably meet you anywhere without knowing you. And there's just like what I also love about it, Amir, and I'll stop talking in a second, but I tend to be more like a worldly thinker, and I trust from people's backgrounds in case like there's just a new respect, I think, is what I've really captured. And this just hit me not too long ago. I was like, man, I really freaking trust these people. But I guess, Amir, can you kind of start from the beginning? Like what kind of got you into this? And why have you been coming back for years and years and years to it?
Yeah, so let me say two things. One, I want to come back to the black belt and color belt thing for a second, because I think there's one more idea or thought I want to plant for the listeners of your show. One of the other things that martial arts teaches you is empathy. So if you're a color belt, for example, and you're on the mat, you are not the safest person to spar with. Period. End of story. Right? Because A, you don't really have the technique or the mastery. So a black belt in any dojo is going to be the most safest sparring partner for you in any martial art, because they've learned some basic skills of control. So the empathy of it comes in with having that idea, that an awareness that you have a color belt who needs guidance, and you need to make sure you are there for them, supporting them. So that's one of the key things that I want to tie into your question, which is, why did I actually go into martial arts in the first place? It started out with the stupidest of things, like any teenager, which is watching 80s kung fu movies. Right. So
Yes.
that's my introduction to martial arts. But once I started training in martial arts, and I trained in other forms before, Kaju Kembo was one, Muay Thai is another. What I started noticing with all these different martial arts is that, the same core values, the human values, empathy, strength, character building, trustworthiness, skill, all of those things start showing up. So my attraction to martial arts has more to do with becoming a better human being in general. Because one of the things I've learned about myself over the years is that, whether I have the highest title in a company, or I'm starting a new business, or I'm just, your neighbor down the road, everybody has wants and needs. And for me, what's important is that, can I put myself in their shoes, and can I recognize their wants and needs so that I can be somebody who can give value to them? And I think that's what it boils down to at the end of the day is, how are you going to be a useful human being to your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends and family, and so on?
Mhm. Well, yeah, and I think empathy is great, and that's really what you just spoke about is compassion is empathy in action, right? And I think I was going to say it earlier, but whether we're walking down the strip in Las Vegas or meeting each other on the mat, to Tyler's point, it's titles don't really matter, and neither do labels at that point. It's hand to hand combat, and I think that we've put such us humans limit our not only our abilities and maybe the abilities of others to want to conserve energy by applying a label, right? And I think Tyler and I were fascinated just with general networking, right? Is we're always asking that first question is, what do you do and where do you work? And then that kind of sets up the tone for the rest of the discussion or the conversation. But it's really fascinating. What are some of the differences? Like, what would you say is makes you effective on the mat that wouldn't make you as effective within the boardroom, or vice versa?
Mm. So I think at the end of the day, the common thread there is skill. I have to have skill in what I do in my corporate life just as much as I have to do in the mat. And your body plays a part in it, your mind plays a part in it, and how you show up with your whole self really makes a difference in how effective you are in either one of those settings. So, to me, it's about mastery at the end of the day. Black belt without practice means nothing. And similarly, if I'm pretending to be a software engineer but I don't write code, well, am I really a software engineer at the end of the day?
Yeah.
If I'm a leader and I'm not practicing leadership, am I really the best leader I could possibly be? Right. So those are the kinds of things that I think about when it comes to how I show up in either the dojo or in the corporate world.
Yeah. How do you make sure that you're showing up as your full self within that mind and soul? Because I think you got a lot of control, obviously, with your body, and you mentioned some of the mind and spirit aspects of when you're on the mat and somebody throws you something that you weren't expecting. But how do you keep that mind and soul in alignment with that body?
Mm. So that is a constant struggle. So for example, I'll use this conversation as an example. I was in a call at work, pretty intense call. And now I'm coming here talking to you guys. I have to be in a different frame of mind. So it's all about, how well do I know myself? And one of the things I tell, folks who come to me for either advice or mentorship is, I always tell them, first question I ask them is that, have you met yourself yet? And this has been a lifelong journey for me, is meeting myself. So for example, what practices did I do before I, you know, joined this call? Take a deep breath. slow down, understand what is expected of you as an outcome in this call, make sure I ground myself in that outcome, and then enter the call, right? So it's no different from when I go to the dojo. I had a hard day at work, drove to the dojo. Man, traffic was bad. Oh, horrible. Somebody cut me off, et cetera, et cetera. Now I'm at the doorstep of the dojo. Open that door. What is the first thing you do? Once you cross that threshold, you got to be able to switch because you're no longer in that environment. You're in a new environment. And how you represent yourself in the changing environments you go into is really part of that practice and mastery, and that is one of the things that, martial arts teaches you as well is you're not sparring one type of fighter, you're sparring multiple fighters, different skill levels. One hits harder than the other. One may be faster than you. How do you adapt? And that adaptability really is the same kind of thing that you need to do in the corporate world. Now I have to be hands-on in a project, even though my role is, managing a bunch of people in an organization. Can you make that switch? And that's kind of the constant adaptation that I do, at least, to your question.
Yeah. I love what you said. As soon as you're stepping into that over that door frame, right? You're switching that environment, and it requires you to be fully present. You can't really think about the meeting that you had, or the stressful conversation, or the person that cut you off, because if you do, obviously, then you might miss something. And I think that's huge. I think a lot of times when I'm not fully present within a meeting or a conversation, even you miss some of the critical pieces or evidence that other people are giving you without maybe even knowing. But you're missing all of that. And I've really, to your point, I think the being in the now has really brought more joy, frankly, to my life. But I'm with you. It's a constant struggle to find that alignment. But getting back to some of those centerpieces, like you said, the breathing, really setting that intention allows you to quickly reset. And I think that only comes, to your point too, is with self-awareness. I would catch myself in like slumps or phases, and for months at a time sometimes, right? But now I definitely am able to catch some of those thoughts faster, and pick them out, to isolate, to reflect.
So Kevin, I mean, that's a very serious topic we're just not having, so I want to make it a little lighter. So I will tell you, not everything needs to be world changing at the end of the
Yeah.
day, right? So when I joined this call, for me it was outcome. Every call I join, what's the outcome? What's expected of me? And I'll use the dojo again. When I'm in the dojo, there's only one outcome I'm thinking about. Do I get to kick somebody in the head today? Because that's the goal that will relieve the stress for me. So and Tyler, I'm sure you can relate to this. Hey, did I get to, choke somebody out or pin somebody down? And it's hard, especially if you've got a big guy like Renard, for example.
Impossible. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same thing, right? Once you achieve that goal, I think as human beings, we feel like we've accomplished something. Like the day was worth the effort.
hmm I love that. What happens when you miss that goal and you fail? How do you prevent your mind from telling you, "Oh, here you go, Amir. Here's proof that you're not as good as you thought you were," right? Or you're not worthy of this success. You're an imposter, right? You're pretending you're not really gifted at software development. How do you prevent yourself from going into that negative self-talk with a result that you didn't expect?
Yeah. So this is the age-old question. How do you let that voice, how do you stop that voice from taking over your head? I'm reminded of one of my instructors. He said, uh, if you think you can, you will. If you think you can't, you will. So the point is, are you going to let that voice be the voice that tells you what you're not capable or capable of? Or are you going to, ignore that voice and take it as a data point in your journey? At the end of the day, we all have that negative thought that comes in. And one of the techniques that I've adopted is talk to myself in the third person, because it turns me from me being bad to me to a third person voice being kind to me. So instead of saying, hey, that was terrible presentation. I don't know what you were thinking with that joke that landed so terribly. Why did you even think about that joke? And that was the CIO of the business. What are you thinking? So the to turn that around, the example I would use for myself is that, okay, hey, Amir, that joke didn't land very well. I think in the future, before you go do this presentation and you want to drop a joke, especially when the CEO or CIO is in the room, you might want to practice the joke a little bit more.
Stand-up comedians do that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And it becomes a more kinder conversation at the end of the day,
I love that.
So with practice, I think anybody, if you talk to yourself in the third person, and this is not just me making it up, there's plenty of books out there that talk about the psychology of self-talk in the third person. And that's where I picked up this practice, is reading about the mind and what it means. In fact, I think it was maybe Dr. Zenser's book, Zentser, I think is how it's spelled. It's been some time. But effectively, by doing that, you can easily find yourself in a more kinder place than just talking to yourself in a negative tone all the time.
100%. Yeah, I found it beneficial when somebody gave me the tip to name that third person, right? And
Yeah.
almost like this alter ego, if you will. And to your point, it really helped, especially when you can catch it.
Yeah, and Amir, how do you balance? Because I feel like your precision is just on point, man. Like just like listening to you speak and then knowing you for a little bit. But how do you balance precision and over analyzing? I want to say, is there how do you deal with being so dang precise but not overthinking?
So this is again one of those things that, over the many years that I've been working, if you met me 25 years ago, you'd probably have a different perception of me. Um, but I think what it boils down to really is just practice. I've realized that at some point, instead of being the individual contributor that I used to be and being the leader that I need to be, I needed to understand that there is power in giving up power. So what I remind myself about is that I can tell my team from my point of view and be prescriptive. And I can also choose not to be prescriptive, but ask questions to guide them to where they need to be. But ultimately, it's the same practice for myself. I can choose to tell myself that I need to go finish XYZ things, or, hey, can somebody else do it? Maybe give them a chance. Maybe I create an opportunity for a gig for somebody to go do something, and that frees me up from doing whatever it is that needed my attention.
Got you. Okay. Okay. And how so you were talking about, asking specific questions to your team, maybe to get some of that out of them. How do you keep your team ignited, all year long? The holidays are about to come up. You can't really be in lax mode probably ever, I would assume, in your position, but how do you keep the drive up?
First of all, I want to compliment the team I have now. I've been very grateful to all the hard work that they've done, and I have a great bunch of people working with me on a day in, day out basis. So let me start with gratitude there. My style of working tends to be more, you know, let the people figure out, come up with ideas, let them, because ultimately that's why they're here. They're leaders, they have teams of people. What can they do to show me a different way that I'm not thinking about? So what I tend to do is I focused on what are the outcomes and goals that I want us to achieve in a year. In, quarterly check-ins or in monthly check-ins, I'll ask them questions about how is it going with those goals? What are you actually challenged with, if anything? And just set the stage so that they know that I'm supporting them and I work for them. And I don't want them to feel like they work for me. And the reason for that is if I'm not accessible to them, then it becomes a problem for me to know what really is happening. And I'll share with you a very specific practice on that vein. One of the things that I like to do is set up office hours for myself. Once a week, 30 minutes, anybody's invited. You don't have to book time with me, just show up. But if you need one-on-one time with me, let me know and I'll go ahead and, carve out time. But if anybody comes up and shows up, that's when I get to listen to things that, people are not talking about, or people are just talking about within themselves. So being accessible, being available, those are the ways in which I try and show up as a leader.
And do you feel like being accessible to others, like you have to be aligned yourself first? Like, have you ever had a day go sideways, Amir, like in a personal life, and try to be accessible to others? Because I have, and it's pretty dang tough. But I guess how do you start your day? You know, your weekday in order to be there for them consistently. Because I think anyone can be there for you for a week or 2 weeks or a month, but like year after year, like how have you kept up the pace, I guess, and your self-alignment in order to help others?
This is where I come back to meeting myself again. I've
Yeah.
realized there's a few things that help me stay calm and focused and grounded, and I just keep doing those practices. And it starts with early in the morning. So for me, I'm up early in the morning. I write down, one of the practices I picked up is writing down what I want to accomplish today. But I also write down how do I want to end my week. So I like to say, how do I end my week on a high note? So what is that high note for me each week? So as long as I keep shooting for these short-term goals, it helps me stay focused on what the long-term goals are. And then once a month, once every 3 months, I'll come visit my long-term goals for the year and remind myself and say, am I doing anything right now that isn't helping that long-term goal? So that's just how I show up. In martial arts, it's the same thing. You've got stripes on your belts as you progress, even in jujitsu. Those are your short-term goals. Your long-term goal is a black belt. So it's just taking that practice to the corporate world and saying, how do I create short-term goals, which is the thing we like as people, and then what are my long-term goals, and what am I doing now that is supportive of those long-term goals?
Do- So every morning you're writing this down.
I do. So you don't see this, but I'll show you. I won't show you the front of this, but I'll show you the back of this. There's this thing called a Post-it note. You know, the nice thing about a Post-it note is that I can rip it off at the end of the day. And I can fold it and chuck it in the bin. It's a great feeling, Tyler.
Yeah, because
Sounds even better than checking a list. Yeah, so that sounds really good. Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I bought in so many of those journals that like have all the things like lined up for you with all your goals, and for some reason I go through like 5 pages and chalk it up. So you just
Yeah.
Post-it note it.
I do. I do. So I do have diaries and things. I haven't quite gotten on the bandwagon of digital everything, So I do have an Apple Notes that I use the Forever Notes framework. So if you're not familiar with Forever Notes, just look up myforevernotes.com, and it's a whole system somebody described to use Apple Notes as your, second brain, if you will. So for me, that's great if I want to remember something long term or come back to it. But on a day-to-day stuff, if I just want to feel like I'm moving the needle forward, like that sense of accomplishment is important for me as a human being. And I'm sure others feel the same way. If I felt like I accomplished something, then it doesn't make me feel like I'm always trying to, protect myself from drowning, because that is a very debilitating feeling. And I know a lot of us sometimes feel that way in corporate, or even as an entrepreneur. I can't find that round of funding, for example. It's very hard as an entrepreneur to get past that feeling. So for me, it's just these simple things in life that, Post-it notes, for example. What are the 3 things I want to accomplish today, or 5 things? Um, at the end of the day, I can rip it off and throw it away in the bin. Now I actually have a physical touching thing that connects my mind to my body and says, here, now I've accomplished something today. I'm not just drowning in work, because that is not a good, healthy place for anybody's mind.
Definitely. Yeah. I love what you said. I mean, that's a broader definition or more simplistic definition of anxiety, right? Is
Mm.
especially when you're kind of saying, I feel like when you are busy, you're not even aware of all the things that you are accomplishing and completing, because it's always like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I love journaling. I'm right there with you. I think there's something to be said with holding a pen in your hand or a
Mm.
pencil in your hand and physically making that connection. Obviously, there's been some scientific research and studies on that as well. And one of the things I want to go back to is helping. Right? I think it sounds like we got 3 helpers in the room. And what I started to realize before I went into my self-awareness journey is helping others had become such a part of my identity that it also became a convenient distraction from that noise in my own head, right? So as people were talking, I always wanted to jump in, fix, heal, share my perspective, share what I learned through my journey, thinking that it was always the best way to approach those situations. And now I found that I like to ask right ahead of time, like, are you looking for advice or are you just looking to vent? Um, how do you leverage the strengths that you have within leadership to not stunt the growth of others on your team? You said you used the word prescriptive, which is great. Now you might have a prescription of for the disease or the challenge that an individual's facing, but they won't learn and turn information into knowledge, into wisdom without going through the same process that you and I are both talking about, our years of experience, if you will. How do you help in that development to work them through a challenge without giving them the answer?
Yeah. So this is one of the hardest things we do as leaders, is you sometimes know the answer and you just want to give it to them, and I'll use my kids as an example. Like I'm probably giving them more answers and helping them get to wisdom.
Yeah.
So I'm probably guilty at some level of that, and probably with some of my folks too, where there would have been moments when I'm not 100% present, and I may have, not given them the questions that would have helped them. But it comes back down to being mindful. How do you? And I love what you said earlier, Kevin. Compassion turns to empathy, or compassion is empathy in action. It's being aware that somebody is asking, but they may not know or have the awareness in that moment what the right question is. Because a lot of us, we think we know what the right question is, not realizing that there's an entire dimension we're not even considering. So, as a leader, one of the things I try and remind myself is, what is it that this other person really needs? Put myself in their shoes. And sometimes it's not easy. And I'll confess to that. And I know it's not 100% batting average for me, but at the end of the day, that's the intention behind the conversation.
Nice. And Amir, I was just thinking over here, um, what is the best, like when you were younger, did you ever receive any constructive criticism, or anything to like really open your eyes on who you are? Like, did you ever have feedback from some professional in your life that really changed Amir's path?
So, not when I was younger. So I'll tell you something about growing up in an Asian family. You're always told what you need to do. you know?
Italians, I'll speak for the Italians as well. Ditto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna be a doctor. You're gonna be an engineer. You're gonna do this. You have to learn this. You have to learn that, right? You're always told and prescribed, and you just follow. You just take your marching orders and go. So it wasn't until later in life when I started, working and interacting with people. So this is going a little bit way back. So as a teenager, my first foray into the professional world was I started a consulting company. So at 19 years old, I started a consulting company, and I realized at 19 years old and this is the dot-com era, right? So late 90s, early aughts, nobody wants to buy from a 19-year-old. So I had to learn very quickly that I have to network and I have to find people with sales skills who can go and do the work for me. So in that journey, I realized that, hey, what was prescribed to me was a path strictly for academics into a professional white collar job maybe in the future. But what does it look like if you take a different path? So going off the beaten path, what I learned is you have to adapt very, very quickly. You have to understand. But then how do I even know what I don't know? Right.
Mhm.
So thankfully, I found a few folks along the way who recognized that this kid doesn't know anything. He wants to be in business. He has no clue what he's getting into. Right. So let me give him a few nuggets of advice. But, some of these folks inadvertently or maybe, intentionally became mentors for me. They taught me a few things, and I'm grateful for all the nuggets they shared with me. But then I started running into coaches. I learned that, hey, there's this thing called coaches. You have them in sports, but guess what? You also have them in business, and you also have them as an executive. And that got me down a different path. So it's not one specific person, I'd say. It's really been a number of people along the way who've helped me learn and become who I am today, including my parents. I think that they've done a great job in instilling the hard work and the values that go along with my desire to be the best. Maybe I'm not the best in everything, but definitely that's where I start out is I want to be the best, right? So it's a bunch of people, not one person.
Yeah,
Love that.
thanks, Samir. And how do you tell the journey or your story, or maybe give an example to the youth wanting, to be a senior director one day? Because I think some people get caught in that, there's nothing wrong with the IC roles at all. But like with the people that want to move up, I have some friends that they think they missed the boat on it. They just they never got the opportunity to work on their leadership skills, and navigate their business. Like, how did you move up, from being on the dev side? And I guess I would assume you showcased some sort of leadership skills along the way before you were the title of a leader. But what do you tell the kids and people that are wanting to move up right now? And I'll give you a quick story. We had Fern on here and she described how to be a CTO, and I don't think many kids want to go that path, after she was saying she was, in Indonesia, then China, then, Brazil, then US, and all over the map. But I guess what advice do you give for people, Amir?
Yeah, I think for me, again, it comes down to what's your purpose? I think about, so if we go back to the playground, nobody in a playground is saying, I want to be a senior director or I want to be an IT tech. Like, that's not even a thing. You're saying, I want to be a race car driver, I want to be an astronaut or a policeman, whatever. And what I tell people is that, if you want to go down the leadership path, then you have to understand that there's a difference between being a professional engineer, for example, in my case, versus being a leader. You can get your AWS certifications or .NET certification or Python, whatever your craft is. Those are all wonderful. If that gets you excited, there are plenty of companies out there that have a career path for ICs that go all the way up to VP, even SVP level. So think IBM, even where I work now, there are roles for ICs up to the VP level. And what that means is you not only are you mastering your craft, but you're also mastering influence. And influence as an individual contributor looks different compared to an influence from a leader with teams of people. So what I tell people is, if you recognize that I want to stay as an engineer or I want to stay at some kind of craft, there's going to be a company out there that will give you those opportunities. You just have to be clear about what you want. What is it that you want to get out of it? People leadership is not for everybody.
No.
Because it's easy to mess people up and then they hate you and the company suffers as a result of it. It's never a pretty picture.
Well, I love what you say is that you have to know what you want, and I think for a long time, at least I can speak for myself in my career, is I didn't know the answer to that question, Amir. I think to your point is college childhood, and obviously you want what's best for your child, and I think giving them that expectation sometimes comes from the best place, right? Under the best intention. However, maybe you and I didn't really develop that skill as much as to understanding what passion even was, right? If somebody's telling me who I have to be or how I should present myself out in public, I started to notice that gap of who I actually was versus who I was told I should be or have to be, that gap started getting pretty damn big, right? Pretty quick. And I think the way that you put it is really putting yourself out there into these unique situations. That's where I see so much value in internships now, which I'm kicking myself that I never did. But like, here is your opportunity to really understand and know, right? Did that light a fire under you or did it not? And that's really the conversations that I've had with some of our apprentices and interns that have turned into full-time employees is start to take stock of the things that feel like work and the things that you could do with your eyes closed and not watch the clock and see what time of the day, what hour that it was. That's usually a good inclination as to what you're passionate about. And passions change. I think your purpose remains the same, but I've found that passions for myself, at least, definitely change. Just like you, if I'm doing something, I'm going to put 100% effort into it. And if I'm not, and I'm really struggling and I'm procrastinating, that's usually some of my warning signs that it's like, maybe this really isn't something that you want to do. But one of the things I wanted to ask is, I've learned more from my failures than I have my successes. I'll be bluntly honest. I suck at even celebrating the success that I do have, because it almost, to your point, Amir, becomes the expectation. And if I met an expectation, then I want more of it. But what did you fail at? What did you suck at? What did you stink at that has really helped you become, um, evolve, let's say, from an individual contributor to this team, to lead others and to not only motivate yourself, but to help motivate others as well?
What did I suck at? Wow. That is a very long list, Kevin.
We can compare notes at the end of this. I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
Oh yeah, it's
yeah.
the
So-
most freeing
so-
feeling. Yes, keep going.
So, okay. So I'll reverse that a little bit, right? So if I count the number of things I do really well, that list is much shorter. Okay. But the reason why that list is so short is because I've tried so many other things and really failed miserably, So, which is why I say that list is much longer. And I want to double down on what you just now said, is because, like you said, you've tried so many other things and then you've realized that's not my passion. I don't feel energized by it. And it's the same thing for me. I've realized that if I don't try something at least once, then I won't know if this is something that is going to help me or it's a skill that I can, transfer elsewhere. It's easy for us to read books. It's easy for me to read books and say, these ideas are brilliant. And that's all I'm going to do with it. If you're going to receive knowledge and not put it to work, it's, you're just listening to a podcast. You're not putting into action anything, right? So that's the motivation that I give myself is I don't call it win or loss. We talk about W's and L's. You see that on sports games all the time. I think more and more in terms of win and learn. So for me, even if I don't do something well, I want to go do it, because what I find inevitably is there's an idea or concept in whatever is it that I'm doing that helps me somewhere else.
No.
And we've got plenty of examples in the world for that. Pick any drug that was meant for one purpose. Ozempic is another example, right? It was meant for, I think, diabetes, but here you are now using it for weight loss.
Yeah.
Right. And then Botox and wrinkles is another example. But then, you go into other areas and you find this crossover of knowledge happening. And that to me is the most important part of just being human, is how do I take what I know? How do I put it to work? And then how does it help me in other parts of my life? And not to turn this into an AI conversation, but that's another thing that we're experiencing collectively, I think, as a community of people. AI is going to force us to think more critically and not just follow a script that was, baked into our parents and our grandparents and so on, which, if you look at our school systems, and this is not a critique of the school systems, we have a system that is designed to get you hooked on extrinsic validation. Hey, good job. You got an A. Well done. Oh, I'm sorry, Tyler, you got a C today on biology. Right.
Sure did.
I mean, it's just that comparison. And then you get stack ranked in school. Like, we get taught this stuff in school. And I went to Catholic school where, you had A, B, C, D, E, 5 different groups. If you were in group E, you were not the smartest of the bunch. So which class were you? You were in class 5A. Oh, okay. So you were in the top of the class. So that kind of systems, I think, is what I think about, at least, is how do I examine my past and how does it change me today as a person in the future?
And but also not become an excuse, right? Where now this is why my behavior is this way. But I think that understanding, and I love what you said, is like society does have a way, whether it's a title, whether it's a grade on a test or a project. But we almost force individuals to get into that judgment, right? Whether it's of self or of others, which leads to that envy piece. But that external reliance on external validation. I love what you said. That extrinsic motivation is really the focus and the emphasis. And I think it creates a challenge for employers, right? To how do I take somebody and intrinsically motivate them now for engagement? Because you can do the parties, you can do all these things. It doesn't always work for everybody. Like, they have a different way that they like to be praised or rewarded or recognized. I think this belief that there's this one size fits all is a real challenge. But not everybody wants positive feedback. They actually get more motivated through negative feedback or what they stink at. Again, that's more motivating to them. So I love what you said. I think win and learn is a great way to kind of approach each situation and scenario, because even if it's bad or you lose or you fail, right? I think walking away with those two items, you can't lose.
Exactly.
And Amir,
Exactly.
thanks for
Love it.
bringing that up too, man. Like I was in that same trance what you just talked about in the education system. Like it just didn't make sense. I just wasn't in it. Like I dropped out of college. I was like in logistics. I could care less about how freights move, guys. Like it's not my like in 2003 they were like, don't go into marketing. I'm like a walking billboard, dude. You know, but like and it got me down for 10, 15 years. And when I met Kevin, I was like a cold caller, man. And Kevin was like, you're cold calling? I was like, yeah, man, isn't it great? You know? And he was like, what are you? But like, and now to the point where I'm like running laps on people with their masters and whatnot. It's like, it's honestly the most freeing feeling I've felt in a long time. And I wanted to ask you, Amir, like how do you honestly feel free? Like what are some things, some practices that you wake up and you just feel free?
So I wake up so early in my house that I'm usually the only one awake. That's pretty liberating. I'll
Yeah,
say that.
just something as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, so that's how I start my morning is, do I have quiet? Can I just sit down and put my thoughts on paper? Because to me, everything else that happens in the day is grabbing me and my attention away from the things that I have deemed important, right? And then what ends up happening at the end of the day is if I don't get to achieve those things, I feel frustrated. So liberation to me is knowing what I can control and what I can't control, and doing more of the things I can control as much as I can, even if it's the 5 minutes in the morning that I'm writing my sticky note, you know? So
Okay.
it's a very intentional practice, I guess, is what I would say.
So knowing what you can control.
Yeah, that's serenity. Serenity prayer is pretty powerful stuff.
Mm.
One of the things I was going to ask, well, I guess call out is I think what we're all talking about, and Amir and Tyler, you've said it both, but is taking information and how much action are you really taking as an individual to then get to knowledge, which continued application once you reevaluate the experiment to get to wisdom to form some of these habits that we're all talking about. But Tyler, I think you've been saying it for years now. It's like, how much action are you really willing to take? And are you willing to step outside that comfort zone to try something new, to break the repetitive cycle? I know I kept trying to do the same thing, right, and get a different result, and I ended up on the insanity train, right? It's like, why is this still the same? Why do I keep ending up in the same spot? And I think Amir is that ego has a way of convincing you that you have control over some things that are way outside of your control. And it also causes you to take things personally. If somebody's just having a bad day and they snapped at you, and now all of a sudden you're very judgmental on yourself and had nothing to do with you to begin with. And that's one of the books that has always stuck to me. All world problems are interpersonal problems, right?
Mm.
As we end, it sounds like you like to read as much as I do and Tyler does. What's one book that changed your life that you would recommend that everybody reads?
So let's see. I'm thinking of several books right now. I wanna pick one. I'll go with How to Make Friends and Influence People. I think that's a classic. Anybody who desires to just be a better person, collaborator, that's a great book to get started with. And then after that, I would say Leadership and Self-Deception.
Hmm.
So if anybody out there is thinking about being a people leader, Leadership and Self-Deception is one of the books that, I'll recommend to folks. Um, and usually it's followed by a question, can you answer what the difference is between a manager and a leader? And then that's how I usually dovetail that conversation. So for me, those would be the two books. If one, How to Make Friends and Influence People.
Yeah. And damn, that mind is a liar sometimes. That's where I love
Yeah.
having mentor side of it, where you have people that are willing to give you that feedback and be that mirror for you.
Yeah.
Because holy cow, yeah, the mind is a fascinating place. But this has been awesome, Amir. I really appreciate the conversation. I appreciate your transparency, but more vulnerability, I think, is where we have more conversations like this, where it's a lot of things that we're all thinking about, but very few are willing to have that conversation to know that you're not alone. So thank you for being a part of our show.
Well, I cannot thank you both enough. I really truly mean when I say that this has been great conversation. I really appreciate the fact that you guys are kind enough to help me at least share the platform with you, right? So this has been great. Thank you for the invitation.